Next week, guys, it's actually happening. We're doing the Q&A episode. If you have any questions that you want to ask me about songwriting, about publishing, about how publishing deals work, about which way the world spins, about why birds fly, or why baby is so satisfying to rhyme with crazy, tenuredtown.com. Submit your question. Thanks. What's up, everybody? Troy Cartwright here. Welcome to this week's episode of 10 Year Town. My guest is Brett Tyler. You know Brett from songs like Wild As Her by Corey Kent, Cold Beer Calling My Name by Jameson Rodgers and Luke Combs. He's had cuts with Lainey Wilson, Morgan Wallen, Jake Owen, and many, many more. But what I really think you're going to take away from this episode is how it takes not only talent, but also a tremendous amount of perseverance. He talks about becoming a professional and being patient, which is a line that has really stuck with me. I love this guy, and I know y'all will too. Without further ado, Brett Tyler. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. I'm glad you're here. So I always start this thing off with the same question, which is just
what did you have for breakfast?
Oh. Cake for breakfast?
No, but that sounds good. Biscotti.
How long have you been in town, Brett Tyler?
I have been in town exactly 12 years and 1 month.
Wow. Today?
Not today, but exactly by the month.
Okay.
So I moved May. No, I'm so off. I'm sorry.
We lost a couple years.
12 years. I'll think I'm coming up on 12 years in September. That's
okay. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
exactly in September, I'll be 12 years.
Where from?
Minnesota.
Did
originally.
you come? How old were you when you moved here? Or was it right after college or?
No. I had like a whole other life I lived, and then I was 28 when I moved here. Yes.
What was your whole other life?
I was playing in bands. I was DJing 90s dance parties. Wow. Playing at
like
churches
weddings?
On weekends. Like anything. No, like this different venues. My friends and I, we started this thing called like the Whoop There It Is early 90s dance party. And we just...
Dude, you were ahead of the curve.
Yeah, because everybody was doing 80s parties, and we were just like we're going to just do early 90s because like everybody can have their 80s parties. We're moving forward. So, and it was an absolute hit, I have to say.
It seems like there's a business opportunity now to do like 2010s, just like a lot of flow rider.
Yeah. I mean, there's always like, whenever one person is doing something that's popular, like 90s dance, like somebody's going to do early 2000s.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's cooler, or, it's
absolutely.
It's like the 80s parties got worn out, and I just joking. It came out of like a joke.
Yeah. But
then we started doing it, and we had like people dress up like in their favorite like 90s stuff. We'd give out like slap bracelets, and everybody was wearing Zubas and different things like that. And it was awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have like a passion for songwriting at that point, or like what made you decide to?
Yeah, I did. It was weird because like I had some friends that were really talented producers and songwriters and musicians, and I basically started writing all these different songs, but they didn't really have like lyrics to them. It was kind of just melodies and guitar parts, and it was influenced by a lot of different, styles, I guess you could say. And then one day I just started like writing lyrics to all of it, and I started like playing it for some friends, and they were like, "You just need to go in and make a record." And I was like, well, that seems kind of crazy to do, but I had a couple friends that told me to do it and kind of pushed me to go do it. So I did. And then I started like realizing like, oh, I'm writing songs now, and completing songs. Really.
Was this in Minnesota?
Yeah. This was like, I think 2008 was when I actually like went in and recorded and put this whole thing out. I think it was. And it's kind of a fun record for me to go back and listen to, but lyrically it's atrocious. But
sure,
it was really, for me, I was always more of like a melody, and just, I loved hearing, certain guitar parts and different tones and things like that. So I was kind of always writing songs, but not always putting like words to them until I guess 2008.
Yeah.
So,
Did you have any sort of blueprint for writing the lyric? Like, I remember I always wrote songs, And then when I was in college, like I kind of had this long winding journey, and then ended up like my senior year in college taking this songwriting class.
Yes.
And it was like, here's how you write lyrics.
Yeah.
It wasn't really that helpful. It just sort of like, was like, oh, walk over there. And, man, I still really don't remember like what clicked, but it just helped. Like one day I'd always been able to write songs, but then I was able to write songs that made sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still working on that, but I feel like, I think that I'd always written poetry as a kid, and I'd always listen to records, and I would read the lyrics, and I would like look at all the liner notes. I was really obsessed with all that stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of the bands I was listening to at the time, their lyrics didn't really make sense anyways.
Sure.
So, and when I was into country music, I was actually like pretty little. And by the time I got into like middle school, junior high, high school, I didn't really listen to as much country music anymore, because it was I was sort of getting into different stuff that my friends were into. And so I sort of stopped, listening to the older country stuff that I, was kind of around me when I was a younger kid.
Yeah.
And so to me, lyrics, I guess, just weren't always as important. It was kind of more of a feeling and a melody. And I just knew that I could there's a lot of I rhymes out there. So I think a lot of my songs just had like I rhymes in them. Yeah. And, and I think that they were more just like love songs, and they weren't just like super deep and meaningful. They were just kind of like, I think listening back to it now, it's sort of like there was some interesting emotions in it, but wasn't saying a whole lot aside from just like feelings. It wasn't trying
it was
to be
very
too smart.
Very raw, probably.
Yeah. So I think honestly, I didn't really feel like it, like lyrics were as important to me until I came here and realized that people were writing such incredibly lyrical songs and having twists and different, ways of kind of getting to hooks and things like that. I kind of realized, like when I moved here, that lyrics were probably my weakness. If I looked at everything I was doing, I felt like I had, a million melodies and all sorts of different things that would come naturally to me on an instrument. But lyrically, I just felt like I wasn't saying a whole lot, and I was looking at a lot of other people who were. Yeah. And so to me, I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to go to a school, but I felt like this town kind of took me to school in a way. And I just started to really dig in. I love that. And focus more on like why songs that I thought had great lyrics. And there's also those songs out there that, kind of like the Music Row songs that are just like, they may not have been like a big hit, or they may not ever be, or anything like that, but they're just like among the songwriting community. There's those songs that just like people kind of love, and they get sent around. And I always kind of was like, what made those so special and cool? And like, I kind of knew what it was, but it's like, how do I start to try to engage that side of me as well? Yeah. So, well, let me back up just a little bit. So talk to me about how you ended up like coming to Nashville. Like, did you know somebody here? Did you just kind of figure it was a place you should go? Or I had a friend who I was kind of playing some shows with her and doing some music with her. We were both kind of working at, like, in Minnesota, a lot of musicians could find work on Sundays for churches and things like that. And so there was kind of a network of us that would just play and, participate in the worship services and stuff like that. And it was sort of like a paid gig. So it was a lot of Saturday nights at the bar, Sunday mornings at church, which was kind of funny. But, it was a way to kind of, stay involved in music. And so I met her, and she was kind of taking these trips back and forth from Nashville. And I had a couple other friends that were all sort of in the same group that were sort of doing the same thing. And then I was just kind of like, what are you guys doing? Like, is that something that just like anybody can do? Yeah. And so, kind of through that process, I started like visiting, and there was this guy named Guy that I kind of stayed with for the very first time that I visited, and just kind of like, felt a lot of the hospitality and just started like get interested in, the community and everything. And so I think I kind of started taking more and more trips through these friends from Minnesota. And then eventually, like when I moved, I lived in like a house with 5 other guys from Minnesota.
Oh, really?
So that was, a big part of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you moved here, how long did it take to did you feel like you knew what you were doing at all? Or was there a lot of trial and error?
I did have my one friend, she emailed like a lot of publishers.
Okay.
And was like, I realize now what she did was like such a big favor to me.
Gotcha.
But just emailed like a lot of different publishing companies and was like, this is my friend Brett. Like he is, looking into moving here and, he writes songs and does all this kind of stuff. And so I started kind of taking meetings with a lot of different people. And I felt like, because I didn't go to Belmont and I didn't do a lot of the things that maybe other people have done in town. So it was kind of like my way was just trying to get in front of these publishers and just be like, hey, like I want to try to come take trips here and write for a week and then go back and kind of keep doing that. And so I think I just kind of started doing that. And it was, I think the first year was maybe like 2009 and then 2010. And it was each year I felt like I took a few more trips. And then finally, like the end of 2011, I moved. And then I think I signed my publishing deal officially like May 2013. So like a year and a half later. So it was kind of, thinking back, it was actually kind of quick. And really November is kind of 2012 is when I started really kind of going through the paperwork and the process of signing a deal and everything like that. So yeah, it was quicker than I maybe realized at the time. I was getting impatient and everything. So
yeah, well, everybody, you want it to happen fast.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are moving here when they're really young.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of were somewhat grown.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think I always joke if I was in Nashville and I was in 2021, I probably would have got kicked out. But
I feel like I didn't move here till I was 26.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way. I would have messed it up somehow.
Yeah. There's just, I think for me, especially moving a little bit later and having a little bit more of like focus in my life. I was still going out and being social and doing all of the things, but I felt like I was also trying to be really strategic and be like, okay, well now I don't have any money, so I need to figure out a way to do this. And, I was like, I'm not going to rely on my parents or anybody to try to help me out. And so I think it was just I was a little more focused and just like, I really want this to work. And if I don't believe in myself, then I should just go home. And I knew that I felt like there was some reason for me to be here and I could contribute something. So I think that I almost had this sense of just like, it's going to be okay, but I'm just going to like work hard, try to be nice to everybody.
Yeah.
And then just be as patient as I possibly can. I think I saw a lot of people around me that were really bummed when they didn't see things happen, right away within the first couple of years. And I know even for me, like a year and a half of, being here and having a publishing deal, that's still, I don't know why, but it still felt like a really long time.
But it is,
Yeah, it is. But then I think because I attached the couple of years before that I've been visiting and stuff too. Mm-hmm. And my mindset then was like, well, maybe I can just sign a publishing deal and live in Minnesota still, which was just not a reality.
It's hard to do.
Yeah. So I think that I saw a lot of people get upset and either move back to where they were from or different things like that. And I said, well, hey, if anything, I'm just going to wait it out longer than anybody else. And I'm just going to be like a songwriter, but I'm also just going to be like a professional at being patient. And that's going to be, if it's 20 years before anything happens, I'm still going to be here, or at least that's what I told myself.
I love it.
So, and that's I do great. Think there is something about like, things move kind of slow and they take their own time and things sort of line up in their own way. And I just was like, as long as I can kind of keep doing it and not be, living in like on the streets, you know, there's a way for me to just continue on and keep
Sure.
doing it. So,
Well, and it feels like it's almost like if you move to Nashville and you're patient and you know you're going to be here for a while, like it's like you emit some smell or something. It's like people can tell. They're like, oh, okay, this guy's going to be here for a while. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's that you just got what it takes or something like that. But patience is such a big part of being able to like kind of stick around and not give up, because some people do just, you know, it doesn't happen in 3 months and that's it, you know.
Well, and there's so many talented people in town too.
Absolutely.
And I think some of that is just kind of working smarter, not harder thing. But I also think like if you're working smarter, you also have to be working harder. But I just felt like I realized there were certain circles of people in town that were sort of, I don't know, important or just at least like well-liked. And they were in those circles. There were certain songwriters or certain artists that were, you know, looked like a lot of people were saying they had a future and stuff like that. And so I'm not one to really go just try to like squeeze into a group of, you know, people and make myself fit in. But I think when you're here long enough, you just kind of sort of find those people that you gravitate to. And I just tried to make sure, you know, to gravitate towards people I really liked and felt like, you know, had things in common, but also felt like had similar goals and just wanting to be successful and wanting to, you know, work hard and write great songs. And I think that's kind of all you can do in a way. But, you know, I think there's a lot of people too that have been in town for a really long time. And it's hard even for me sometimes to see people that are like still just like, you know, on the struggle bus or whatever. But I just can't, you know, sometimes it's like they just haven't quite found their click or written that song yet or whatever it might be. And so, and I'm not one to look at them and analyze their life, but it's just kind of like I started asking myself, like, if, you know, are these people, can I get to where I want to go by, you know, really working with these people? It's kind of just, you know, like anything in life.
Sure.
Trying to surround yourself with good people and
ambitious
you know,
people.
Yeah, exactly.
Same goals.
Yeah.
Who was your first publishing deal with, and like how did it kind of come about?
So I had actually I met this girl named Emily Mueller, or Emily Olson now. She's married. And I kind of talked to her about like, hey, I just think like you are like a great person. And she had kind of done some stuff with like Nathan Chapman during like the Taylor Swift time when he was producing her. And she was just always like a really big song lover. And so I was kind of drawn to her. I was like, hey, I'll pay you like whatever I can a month. And will you help me schedule some rights and help me take some more meetings and stuff? Cause I just kind of found like there was a value in having somebody else on my team that just can kind of go, you know, talk about me. Cause I'm not really honestly that good at trying to go out and be like, you know,
sell yourself.
Yeah. That's just never been something that I'm, you know, really good at or even enjoy doing. So, so she kind of, I mean, she helped me quite a bit in just getting rights and things like that. But then also, I think I was kind of doing some like different writers rounds at like Belcourt Taps. And I was with some friends that night playing. And I remember a couple of the guys from Combustion Music were there. And after that show, they had talked to me and they'd been like, hey, we'd really like to talk to you about, you know, possibly signing a publishing deal with us and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And at the time I'd been sort of like going around and talking with different publishers, but I sort of had the mindset of like, I don't want to like try to knock down the doors too much. I'd rather have somebody try to come to me, but also, you know, try to put myself on the map and everything. So yeah, my first deal ended up being with Combustion, and it was like a co-venture with Warner Chappell. Okay. So yeah.
Still at Combustion, yeah.
So yeah, now I'm actually, I've really always been with Combustion, but up until, I don't know, 2-3 years ago or so, I just redid kind of like a new deal with just Combustion. So unfortunately, the Warner side of that is not on there anymore, but it's just a more me and Combustion type of deal. So
when you signed your your deal, did you feel like things changed for you, like as far as the quality of rights that you were getting, or did you feel like more songs were getting heard, or did it feel like more of the same, just you had a little bit of a, monthly draw to sustain you?
Yeah, well, yeah, the monthly draw was nice for sure.
Yeah.
Even though, most first deals are not, you're not breaking the bank by any means, but basically just not having to feel like I need to have like a part-time job or something like that. And I could really try to write, 5 days a week and everything. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think from my calendar being like for writing with, when I was just kind of on my own, and then Emily was helping me, but she also was working with other people and stuff like that too. So, I think I noticed like quite a few more writes, and just really just with different people and different publishers and stuff. And a lot of that even started before I officially signed my deal, just because Combustion was one of the places that I'd started kind of meeting with. And, or at least in that process, like after that show, they were like, hey, we want to set up some rights with some of our guys. And, so I think from the time that show happened where we met, it was probably like 6 months or so after when I actually signed on like the dotted line. But right around that time when they kind of started investing in me quite a bit more. Yeah, it was more noticeable. But, it's also, you're kind of the new guy and you're trying a lot of different things. You're kind of getting thrown into rooms and you're like, I have no idea if this is going to work or not or anything. Yeah. And that's, looking back, it's part of the fun. You kind of are just, it's like a shotgun blast, and it's just kind of, see what people you would work well with and things like that. See what sticks. Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember like your first cut, or what or your first cut of Consequence, I guess?
Yeah, it was weird because my first cut was actually a song that Joe Nichols recorded called Hostage, but my second cut actually came out before my first cut, which was weird, which was a song I wrote with Benji Davis called I Know a Guy. Yeah. And it was on Chris Young's record. Yeah. And that was like one of my favorite songs I think I had written, to that point. And so that was exciting because that one came out first, and it was just, the two of us. And, awesome. They were flirting with it being a single as always, but
it's always the flirt, man.
Yeah, it's always the flirt. But, I think it was one of those songs too. I think a lot of people just liked it, and it was sort of like, there's the payday and then there's the payday, and like sometimes the payday hits your bank, and sometimes the payday is just like you made somebody feel emotional about a song that you wrote, or that made them think of somebody or whatever, and that kind of thing. So that was,
and like anything, sometimes even just I've had cuts that were not singles. Yes. That have still helped my songwriting career tremendously, because, songwriters are fans of songs. And that's just kind of part of the game, I guess.
Yeah. I think anytime like you have a song recorded by somebody, first of all, it's like kind of an amazing feeling, just because that means somebody, really liked something that you wrote. And, I'm always eternally grateful to anybody who records a song with my name on it. But I think too, all of those, whether they're singles or not, also help just you have more stuff with your name on it, and that people look at that and it helps you get into other rooms, and maybe there's somebody that I've really wanted to write with, and it just hasn't been the time yet. But then maybe I have a certain song that they were like, oh man, I really like that song. We should get together. So I think it's kind of like ammunition in a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I moved to town, you were like a god among men to me. You were like friends with all the dopest people. You had all these really cool cuts and stuff. Man. And you were very, very nice to me, and I appreciate it. But how did you did you kind of find your crew of people right away, or did that just kind of happen over years of being here, or?
The answer is no.
Okay.
I did not find. It's funny. I had a really, really close group of friends back in Minneapolis or Minnesota, and we still are. I'm still really good friends with all these guys I grew up with. So it was a hard transition for me pretty much leaving everything I've ever known, and all of a sudden jumping in with a lot of people that I was like, are these people fake to me, or are they really my friends? Like, it's really hard to navigate some of that. And so I think, honestly, it took me about 1.5 years before I really started feeling like I connected and started making friends with anybody. And I have like sort of a group of friends that I'm close with, and you know how it is. We're kind of like, you know, text threads and stuff like that. So I have a couple like text thread group friends, and then within some of those groups, I have some really close friends, and you know, but I've never. It's weird because I've never been like trying to find my circle. I've always kind of been like, I feel like I'm, you know, just kind of jump around, and I try to be nice to everybody and try to be friends with everybody, but. I've always been, even like growing up, I've always been sort of like a little bit of like, not like an outcast, but not like, you know, not like the one that fits in with everybody. But I've also kind of been the one that like everybody just kind of like, oh yeah, that's Brett, you know, or whatever. So it's kind of like, I don't know if that's cool. I feel like I'll kind of thread the needle there. But.
No, I think it's pretty, I think everyone generally thinks quite highly of you.
Well,
which is, you know, an asset for sure.
Yeah.
Did you meet people? Like, were you I mean, you know, we've had a lot of songwriters on the podcast, and like it's like, yeah, went to Whiskey Jam, went to Red Door, went to Tin Roof. Was that kind of the same program for you, where you kind of met your initial friends or whatever?
I think it kind of was, but I think, you know, it's weird because I think a lot of the guys that like my friends that are like the, you know, Ryan Beaver and Ryan Hurd and Aaron Esice, and a lot of those guys that our group of friends, we kind of just, those guys were kind of already friends at Belmont, and then like just, I started hanging out with some of those guys more, and then we all kind of started hanging out more. So yeah, it was Red Door, it was all those kind of things. Yeah. But then also I was like in the early days of the Santa's Pub thing, and so
that's right. I
met, you know, the John and TJ and Casey and Maren and a lot of the, you know, that crew. And I was kind of like, I wouldn't consider them like my close friend circle, but I just kind of got to know a lot of those people. And then through that got to know other people. And I just kind of felt like, you know, at the time it was kind of just like random little dive bars, and you just, you know, kind of end up meeting more and more people and stuff like that. So it's, I think it's one of those things, like you just sort of eventually you just kind of make enough rounds, and it's sort of like you kind of know everybody and everybody kind of knows you. Yeah. And then in the midst of that, you find like a handful of people that you end up being closer to. You know?
Yeah. You kind of become a part of the tapestry, and then it takes, it really feels similar to like when I went to college. Like I made a lot of friends my freshman year. And then by the end of my time in college, you know, I was still friends with all those people, but I had developed like a different, slightly different close friend group. You just kind of figured out along the way. And Nashville's been a similar experience for me. And now I feel like I don't even leave my house. So, you know,
me too. It's amazing.
Just kind of, but I like my house.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice in there.
Yeah.
Got all my stuff, and
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you have a house and you live, like, even, you know, I live a little bit out of town. It takes a lot for me to try to come in, you know, and do that.
I feel like I used to look around Red Door or something and be like, I wonder why, you know, all the like more established songwriters and artists like aren't here. Yeah. And like, it's because they just stay home.
Yeah. But, you know, I always think too, they were the ones that were here, you know, before us and doing that thing. It is just kind of like this changing of the guards or whatever that happens.
We're all building on top of each other somehow.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're writing for Combustion, and I guess when I first met you, probably 2016, you know, you'd started getting cuts. I think I was familiar with you from Sugar on the Maren Morris. I guess was that the EP or the record? I can't even remember which.
It was the record.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that
song. Hero record.
Yeah. It's a great song.
Thank you.
But yeah, we started writing a bunch, but your first number one was Cold Beer Calling My Name, right? When did that go number one? 2020?
October 21, I
Okay.
think. Yeah. I don't even know.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about it. Like, when did you write it? Who'd you write it with? Like, and then about its journey from, conception to massive hit song.
Oh, man. I don't remember exactly when we wrote it. I want to say it might have been 2015.
Okay.
Or maybe it was 2016 or 17. It was around that.
Okay. But it was a little bit of an older song by the time.
Yeah, it was an older song. I wrote it, with Jameson, Rogers, Hunter Phelps, and then Elisa Vanderheim. And it was one of those that, like, it seems like one of those songs that you'd write in 45 minutes, and it was the opposite. It was like we got together, I think, 3 different times.
No way.
To write it. And I don't know. I think we knew that we just like loved the idea, and I think we had sort of had the chorus pretty much written on that first day, and it might have been me, because I remember Jameson blaming me for taking so long. But I think we really wanted to make sure the verses just didn't feel like every other song that was out there, and just kind of have more fun with it and find, some images and whatever.
Sure.
Just make it kind of feel, honestly, my whole mindset with that song was it to not actually be a beer song, but to be more of like a great day to be alive song. So it's funny because when you listen to it now, it's like, it's not really about drinking beer. It's just that there's a beer calling your name and you've just had a really good day.
Yeah.
But you put beer in it and all of a sudden it becomes a beer drinking song. So, I think that's why we were trying to make it different, where it's more about just being like really happy and having a really good day and excited for, things that are going to happen that night, which is a lot harder to write than any of us realized.
Yeah.
So, I think we got together 3 times, demoed it. And then I think it was like, I want to say that I actually recorded like Hunter's voice on it first, or Elisa recorded Hunter's voice on it first. And then I think we wanted to do more of like a fuller band demo.
Okay.
So I think that I took, what Elisa had done and gone in and put it with like a band over, with like Legends or something.
Yeah.
And I think Hunter was supposed to come and do the vocal, and then Jameson, I was writing with Jameson that day and Hunter wasn't able to. So I just asked him if he would sing on it.
Yeah.
And when he put his vocal on it, it was just kind of like, whoa, like this
is perfect.
Sounds really good with you. And Hunter is a great singer too, but for whatever reason, it just sounded differently.
Yeah.
So we started just like pitching the song, and like Jameson had been putting out some music, and then he had signed his deal with Sony and Riverhouse, I think, with Luke Combs.
Yeah.
And so I think it inevitably just kind of was getting sent all over Music Row, and people liked it, but it was just kind of like, oh, it's another beer song kind of thing. And I think somebody had actually told Jameson, like, this should be your first, like, you should record this song.
Yeah.
And so he had done that, and then I think, had asked, because it was a part of his deal was with Luke Combs. I think Luke had talked to him about maybe singing on like one of the songs, and I think Luke had heard, listened through the record, and Jameson was like, "Is there a song that you'd want to sing on?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, the Cold Beer Calling My Name one."
Dang.
So I remember Jameson told us that, and we were like, "Cha-ching!" So.
Yeah. When did that song come out? And then
what's weird is I think it had been out for like a year already, and it wasn't a single until after Some Girls had gone, because that was his first single.
Yeah.
And then Cold Beer Calling My Name was the second single. And I think that song had already been out for a while, so people had already, heard it and everything like that. But yeah, you just never know what's going to happen on the radio side of things.
Sure.
So, but
can't control that.
Yeah, but that was a fun one, because having a first number one, especially with friends and it, being with a buddy who, had just had his first number one as an artist, and then with this massive country star too, on the second one, was just a cool thing. So,
do you remember like the day it went number one? Did you like pop champagne or shotgun a beer or something? Or
yeah, I remember, because I had a writer's round at the listening room, and then I think I played it that night, and I was like, this is like the number. And I'm pretty sure I saw you later that night too at some point.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think we were, you and Mary Lou. I can't remember if you were at the listening room.
I think I was at that show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you were at the show because that's what I was trying to remember. Obviously, it's a little foggy, but
Sure.
it was fun. And, but it was also like, it was still kind of towards the end of like our, COVID stuff too. So it was kind of like one of those things where it was like celebrating, but, we also didn't really know what to do because it was like,
it was like a weird situation.
It was strange. And then, I remember too, like we didn't have a number one party because nobody was having number one parties too.
Oh,
so
interesting.
I was, it was exciting. It was fun to celebrate, but then it was like much later we had a number one party and I was like, I'm done celebrating it. We had to like re-celebrate it or whatever, but it was fun. So
did you feel like it changed your life? Like obviously there's like some monetary benefits, but did you feel like it changed like the nature of the rooms you were getting into or anything like that? Or was it just sort of like validation for, all the other great work that you've done?
I think it's weird. I think it's maybe a little bit of both. Definitely for me, it was more of like a goal being achieved just because like, I remember when I first moved here, like I had kind of my little checklist of things I wanted to get done. And like, if you're a songwriter and having a number one's not on your list, I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that was just a big personal accomplishment. And then, I think there is a thing I don't know if it's a good example, but I always kind of said it's almost kind of like having the Letterman jacket, like in high school, like I think people just look at you differently. Yeah. And it doesn't really mean that you've done anything differently. You just have a jacket and now it means you're like cool.
Yeah. No,
or something.
It's wild that you use that analogy because I very vividly remember being, at the time I was still signed at Warner and I was in my A&R person's office and we were talking about you and I was like, like all of a sudden, all these songs that you and I had written together were like, oh, we should cut this one. And it was like, it's because he's got the Letterman jacket on now. He's in the club.
But it's just, I think I always told my friends too, and I like it to be true for me, but really, like I think your first number one, it's about the song, but it's also not about the song.
Right.
Like it's about the body of work that came before it.
Sure.
And I remember congratulating some friends on like their number one song, but I also was like, also congrats to you on every song that you wrote before this that nobody is ever going to hear because those are super important songs too. This one just happened to be the magical one that, went and did the thing and got you, the accolade and everything like that. But because I think it's easy to overanalyze, having a number one song because as soon as that happens, I think so many people are like, okay, well, when am I going to have another one now? And I call it like, even for me, who I felt like, don't let yourself get too excited about this because like it's a number one song, but it's also your job. Like your job is to try to write hit songs. So for me, it was like, I call it like the number one blues where you're just like, you're so high on that the week leading up to it and that moment of celebration. And then like, maybe it kind of hangs out for a little bit longer, but then you inevitably have the day where you're just like, oh man, am I even good at this? Was that just a complete coincidence that happened? And it's just songwriters are terrible. They're just
it's
getting
like
our heads too much.
It's like the dog that caught the rabbit or something. You're like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
What do I do with my hands?
Yes, exactly. I'm always wondering that. But yeah, so I mean, I think you can't get too tied up into that part of it, but it does.
It's pretty sick.
I mean, it's awesome for sure. And I think oddly enough, it's most important for the way that other people view you versus the way that I view myself. Like, I feel like I'm kind of still the same guy and still trying to do the same thing. Yeah. But now it's like, I can say, I have a number one song. Great. That's awesome. And then other people know that. And if they don't, that's fine too. But if they do, like, I just feel like it hopefully would help me continue to write great songs and more people would be like, oh yeah, I want to write with Brett because he had a hit. I should try to write with him. And then it's like it's any way that I can, anything that helps me get in the room or get in the door. Absolutely. And try to do my thing. So. And
you recently just had another one. Yeah. Wild as Her.
Yes.
Corey Kent.
Yep.
And I feel like that song got cut like 3 different times or something.
It was that song was on a crazy journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was recorded by an artist in Texas named Colby Keeling, I think it was.
Okay.
And then it's also recorded by a Canadian artist named Tyler Joe Miller.
Okay.
Who I had actually had a number one in Canada with him. And I've gotten to know him, and he's an awesome dude.
Yeah.
And then, third time, the charm, I guess, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Corey Kent. And it's just, it's funny because when you know this, like once you write a song, unless you're going to record it yourself or something, like there's really not a whole lot that you can do, especially like a lot of times, like the best thing you can do is let your publishers pitch it, or sometimes you might pitch it yourself.
Sure.
What was funny is like I had kind of forgotten about the song, not forgotten, but just kind of like I feel like we tried to pitch it to everybody.
Yeah.
And it was one of those songs like a lot of people liked, and for some reason it just never got recorded. And then it's like I wake up one day and I feel like it's recorded, and then it's recorded again, and then all of a sudden it's like recorded a third time, and now all of a sudden this one is like people are telling me it's going viral and it's streaming like crazy and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay.
But
like,
Corey was at the time an independent artist, right?
Right.
So
yeah, independent. And I think he had done, really with Combustion, he had sort of like, they kind of have their little mini label thing going on over there. And I think they started sort of going in and recording some stuff with him. And that was, I think, one of them with the bunch. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a major operation by any means.
Yeah.
So,
but
then it became one, I guess.
Yeah, it did. And it's a monster now.
Yeah. It's been really fun because, I got to see him play it over at the Brooklyn Bowl the other night. And it was just like, it's insane when you hear people just singing a song that you wrote at the top of their lungs. And it's just like, it's like for me, it's like I almost, like I kind of know that, but I also am just like, you just kind of almost forget, and it's weird.
Yeah, what do you mean? You forget like that it's your song?
I mean, it's just like, it's kind of like meaningful. It's like all these people are looking at me like, yeah, you wrote it and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, I did. Okay, cool. It's like, sometimes it's hard to let yourself feel just joy and be proud of it and whatever. And in that way.
No, I get that.
But
like
it is pretty cool to hear it,
Yeah, it's got to be incredible. But I hear what you're saying. Like, personally, I'm bad at like receiving compliments.
Yeah.
So like even, if I'm playing a show and somebody's singing along, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel right now.
Right.
It's like, it's it's an interesting phenomenon. It's probably not very natural, which is why we don't know how to feel.
Yeah. It's probably like my Midwest raising too, where it's just like,
just a humble guy.
Well, or you're just supposed to try to be, whatever. But yeah, it is, it's kind of the radio thing too. Like, when you hear a song on the radio, I think the first time it happened, I was like, all right, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm celebrating, I'm excited or whatever.
Yeah.
But then like, if it happens more, you're just kind of like, cool.
Cool.
And it's really more embarrassing if there's people with you and stuff. You're just like, my wife, Kimberly's always like, Brett wrote this song. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you. Yes. They didn't need to know that. They don't even know what that is.
That's so Kimberly, though.
It's very much. I love her for it, but because nobody else will do it if she doesn't do it.
Yeah, you got to have a hype man, dude.
Yeah. Oh, she's the ultimate hype man.
She is, man. Well, what kind of advice would you give to somebody that's just moving here for the first time? You got any like sage words of wisdom? Would you tell them just don't even bother?
No, I would tell them to bother. I think you have to be prepared for the worst and be prepared, for things to not go your way, and especially not going according to the timeline that you would maybe want. I think you have to know that it's going to be hard work and it's going to take time no matter which way it works for you. Cause I mean, I know people who moved to town and they had initial success right away.
Yeah.
And then the next, several years they're like, what happened? Where did it go? And it's like, I think you just have to, put the work in.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Cause it's weird in a way that I just kind of felt like I knew I was supposed to. It was hard to explain. But somebody, this was just funny. Cause like I just posted my first couple TikTok videos ever. And I tried to respond to the comments on a lot of them just because it's like, if people are taking the time I want to try to connect with them. Otherwise, whatever. And this one guy just said hey, how can you and me and Morgan Wallen get a write together? And I got a bunch of song ideas. And I said something and not trying to be mean, but I was just said jokingly, I said move here, wait about 12 years, just try to work as hard as you can, be nice to everybody, and, just try to write the best songs that you can. And that was sort of my response to that.
It's a pretty good response.
Well, I was just thinking, I was just that's honestly the best advice I could give them. I wasn't being really joking. Yeah. It's truly, because I feel like that's what, you and me and a lot of other people did. You just kind of jump in, and it doesn't work I didn't come to town and was just oh, I'm writing all these great songs. I should probably let Luke Bryan know that he should write with me right now. It's just it just doesn't work that way. And I think if you can believe it, you're going to be writing great songs, and you can do that with a lot of different people. A lot of times, maybe the person that you want, or you think you want to write with, isn't maybe the one that's going to be your best fit. And sometimes it might end up being, a song from, a long time ago that gets recorded 3 times, and then it ends up being recorded by a totally different, brand new artist who's having big success or whatever.
Yeah.
Just it
you
goes.
Never know.
You just never know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think as simple as it is, it's just showing up, working hard, and just being nice to people. Don't give them a reason to hate you.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty good.
And just
advice.
be good at what you do. I mean, I think there is talent is important. I do think it is important.
Yeah.
I think that there's a reason that the people that are the most successful in this town, are the most successful in this town. Sure. And it's not all just connections and they're just really good at hyping people up or whatever. They're just really talented. So I think it's just constantly working on, your craft and working on, for me, working on my lyrics, things like that.
Figuring out where that, where the bar is.
Yeah.
And trying to hit it, as often as you can.
And drink at it sometimes.
That's right.
Yep. Yep.
Well, last question. What kind of stuff do you do to prepare for writes? Are you a guy do you do a lot of voice memos? Do you write hooks down? What's your, what's your method to the madness?
That's a good question for the past. That's a good question for now.
Yeah.
In my life, because it hasn't always been the same, but I probably prepare more now than I've ever prepared for writes. Yeah. But it's not always what you think it might be. I think so much of what I've started to do, there's a couple other people I just noticed, they'll come in with half songs written sometimes, or a chorus written, or just a really, really great sketched out idea. And I started just being I really got to just do that. Cause 12-year-old Brett used to sit in his room and do this stuff anyways.
Yeah.
And it's it's gotten too easy just to show up and just try to phone it in. And not that that's what I thought I was doing, but I just think you don't need to stop, or you don't need to just write between the hours of 11 and 3 p.m. or whatever it ends up being that day.
Yeah.
We have the luxury of honestly having a lot of time before that and a lot of time after that to prepare for the next however many writes that you want.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times for me, I'll get home maybe someday after writing a song and just sit there and just see if anything else comes out. Or I might mess with the one from earlier and be like, hey, some people hate me for doing this, but I'm like, I think the second verse is wrong. And I'm like, here's another option just in case you want it.
Yeah.
And just because to me, it's like, it's actually really important for me and the people I'm writing with to know that like, I really am serious about it. And also I really want this song to win. And I really like them and I really appreciate them wanting to write with me. And so for me, I want to spend the time, even when I like, leave the room and I go home that day, I kind of want to be thinking about it the rest of the night.
Yeah.
And not all the time, but if it's one that I'm really excited about, or if it's just like people I feel like I can write great stuff with again, a lot of times I'll just go home and see what else comes out. Try writing another chorus, try, whatever, just kind of having fun. Sometimes I look ahead at the calendar and say, oh, I'm writing with Troy or whatever. I should just sit around and like try to think of a couple ideas that maybe like Troy would like to write. And a lot of times it's just voice memos. Sometimes like just write it on my phone. Sometimes it's like, there was like a period of time where I just felt like I was getting hit like by lightning bolts over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it was like destroying my sleep schedule because it was like midnight and I'd be laying in bed writing a chorus. Yeah. And then I'd like, have an early morning or whatever, but it was like, I'd bring it in that day and sometimes we would write it and sometimes we wouldn't. But it's just like, I know that when I continue to do that and just take it home with me, because it still started with me in my room with a guitar when I was young doing it. And like, why did it have to stop? So to me, it's like trying to get back to that and bring back some of the fun of just making music by myself as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a long answer, but yes,
That's a great
I feel
answer.
like I'm prepared, but it's not necessarily just for that specific day. I think it's just prepared for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I like to have, I could have like 10 full like choruses in my, somewhere on my phone or something. And just have some options, some ideas so that if my rights get moved around or something like that, like it's like I almost have a lot going on that I am aware of that I could be bringing in rather than just going in that day and then trying to think of stuff off, off the top of it. But
yeah,
so
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I read a lot of, I've just been reading a lot recently in general, but I've been reading a lot of like writers, like authors. And a lot of times when they're getting towards the end of their life, they'll write a short book on writing, and it's crazy because almost all of them talk about, well, I just make sure I wake up and before I lay my head down at night, I've written, I don't know, 1,000 words or 10,000 words. I don't know how many that is, but it seems like a lot.
You're right.
But they just did it every day.
Yeah.
And they did it for decades.
Yeah.
And I guess that's how you succeed. You just don't give up. You work hard and, you try and be the best that you can. And, co-writing is much more collaborative, but I think people remember the people that made their lives easier that day.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, and I think I've always appreciated the people that make my day easier.
That's it.
And then I was like, oh, I should try to be the guy that also makes their day easier.
Yeah.
Too. And I think it's fun. It kind of keeps you in that flow state. There's guys like I feel like there's guys like Craig Wiseman that will text me at like 8:00 at night and be like, hey, I think I've figured out, we did this wrong. We got to put this back in it or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, he has no reason to text me that. Like, he doesn't need to write another hit ever.
Sure.
He loves it.
He loves
like,
the game.
And
man.
I want to be in love with it like that.
Yeah.
And I want to be old and I want to be crotchety and I want to have no reason to write songs, hopefully, either because I just am not having success anymore or I'm having too much success. But I want to keep that same passion to just basically, still fight for, writing something great.
Yeah.
So
I love it. Well, Brett Tyler, thank you so much,
Troy,
brother.
It's been a pleasure.
Dude, absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's it. That's the pod. See you later.
Sweet.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We've got a Q&A episode happening, so submit those questions at 10yeartown.com. Keep rating, keep reviewing, keep subscribing. We love you. Talk to you soon.